women in refrigerators, and more. This week on Burnt Popcorn, I'm Tony Thomas.
And I'm Dave Masakura.
This week we're going to be talking about, we'll get the heavy topic out of the way first. Quite a bit of controversy in the comic book world over the past week thanks to big outrage on Twitter. The release of the Batgirl comic is doing this release where there's going to be alternate covers.
Yeah, variant cover number 41, I believe.
Yes.
Depicts a Joker.
Yes.
Reminiscent from an homage, if you will, to the Killing Joke by the great Alan Moore. Basically pointing a gun at Barbara Gordon's Batgirl. And you could take a look at it, Google it. It'll be the first thing that comes up for, Batgirl controversy.
Right, and she also has the Joker makeup on her face.
Yeah, and it is a very graphic cover. It can be perceived as disturbing, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the allegations of gender violence and basically there's been a narrative.
Right, the underlying tone of referring to the sexual assault that happens to Barbara in The Killing Joke, because that's what the cover is, kind of a homage to her horrific attack that she suffered upon in The Killing Joke by the Joker, where she's stripped nude, photographed, beaten senseless, and paralyzed.
Now, because I'm prepared for this particular argument, I brought my Batman: The Killing Joke Deluxe Edition.
Yes. Same one I have. Very nice edition.
It's a beautiful hardcover edition of The Killing Joke.
Yeah, the colors are very well done. If you're a fan of the comic or just Batman in general, I highly recommend picking this up. And there's some nice little bonus features in the back, some other sketches.
Yeah, great stuff. So if you want to pick it up, go right ahead. We're not getting a plug for that. We're not, getting paid for this plug, but, what the hell. Well, anyway, so what you need to know about Barbara Gordon, obviously Commissioner Gordon's daughter, in this particular graphic novel, there's a scene where, Jim Gordon's just sitting down reading, the newspaper, clipping out Batman stories, and, Barbara Gordon's there. She's giving him some coffee or some kind of beverage, and there's a knock at the door. And she opens the door. It's the Joker in a Hawaiian shirt with his famous purple cap, pointing a gun right at her. Boom, shoots her right in the pelvis, leaving her on the ground. Joker pours some tasty alcoholic beverage and then starts taking a picture of Barbara Gordon, in her desperate state, right in front of the father. Real sick, sadistic shit, granted. So that has always remained to be a very controversial moment in the Batman ethos. But also, I believe it's the origin story of Batgirl. Is it not?
That I'm not 100% of. Admittedly, I'm not entirely fresh on Batgirl's origin, but it is a very important moment. It's probably one of the most controversial moments in DC, and later on
for her character.
For her character, right?
So if her character is going to be,
I believe she is already Batgirl at this point. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
but I almost positive she's Batgirl at this point.
I mean, if there's any kind of origin story that would make somebody into, a caped crusader, it certainly would be that. And I understand. So you were mentioning the women in the fridge,
right? Well, let me just throw this. Batgirl made her appear. Barbara Gordon as Batgirl made her appearance in Detective Comics 359, the $1 Million debut of Batgirl, 1967. So she was already Batgirl at the events of The Killing Joke. I just wanted to also throw out here, this is one of those added controversies to it. When Jim Gordon is tortured later on in The Killing Joke, he's forced to view nude photos of Barbara Gordon that the Joker took, presumably, after some kind of sexual assault.
Yeah.
That's kind of the implication there. But one of the controversies that this is kind of harkening back to...
said women in a fridge.
Yes, women in refrigerators.
And now I was unfamiliar with women in refrigerators. Granted, you know, and you looked at me and you said, on the way here, you were like, Dave, women in refrigerators. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that line refers to a panel in Green Lantern number 54 where Kyle Rayner comes home and finds his girlfriend Alex DeWitt killed, and her body has been stuffed in a refrigerator by Major Force, the villain in that story. So this kind of... There's a website out there called Women in Refrigerators, and the purpose of that website is to sort of track and analyze instances of violence, injury, and depowerment to female characters in comic books when these are used as a plot device, and they kind of look why it's disproportionate to females. There's long been an argument, I guess you could call it more of a critique in comic books, that female characters get maimed, killed, brutalized in far greater extremes than their male counterparts. And this has led to a big discussion, especially from female fans of comic books. Their argument is simply, you know, if you're going to keep hurting female characters like this, you're not going to get female viewership. And Twitter erupted in fury when this cover was revealed. There was a demand to have it removed, and that seemed a little nuanced as well. This is a very nuanced discussion.
And look, admittedly, yes, female characters in comic books for most of comic book history have been horrifically objectified. They've been, beaten, tortured, bound,
right,
gagged,
and sexualized.
Gender violence galore here.
Right.
We're not, male chauvinists or like the hashtag Gamergate types that are just opposing this, for bullshit reasons. I mean, we understand the argument, and quite frankly, the best argument against the cover itself came from just the Batgirl series itself. Mm-hmm. It just it's more of an upbeat, lighthearted tone that the comic book series takes, and it would seem a little awkward to include something like that. And that has been the best argument. And the analogy made was, of course, it would be like watching Star Wars and having Palpatine rape Padme right in front of Anakin.
Right, and from fans have pointed out that the series, this Batgirl series that's running right now, it's not in the vein of the darker Batman stories by like Frank Miller or even the Alan Moore story, some of the darker stuff that came out in the 80s and 90s. So it was kind of weird to see, but the artist volunteered to take it down.
I think they wanted it down, personally.
I believe seeing the backlash...
They were okay with it being taken down.
Yes, they were okay with it. Granted, they felt that their intent with this image was not to be harmful to Barbara Gordon or Batgirl or her fans. It was to be an homage to a very dark moment in that series. Now,
look, The Killing Joke, even if you're not particularly a fan of comic books, and you might have possibly heard about The Killing Joke.
Right,
it's legendary. It's one of the most iconic stories in comic book history.
And also has one of the most iconic panels where, the Joker sort of descends into madness, that shot of him with... it's a very iconic and very famous
even the cover
scene
with the Joker with
the photo, yes. And Tim Burton and Christopher Nolan have used this as influence in their films.
Definitely, this is you could say the basis for Heath Ledger's performance.
Right,
it's the dark Joker of the 1980s, where writers like Alan Moore really explored the darker psychology of superhero mythdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is up there with, if you made like a top 10 of Batman graphic novels, this is up there with The Long Halloween, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. Mm-hmm. So, do you feel that the image should have been taken down?
My first reaction to it
Mm-hmm.
was no, because it's an homage to one of the
Right.
great Batman stories, and it just something about it, the way that things were happening so quickly, and it just seemed like everybody was having like a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
And I
perhaps,
understand the climate.
Mhm.
I understand the climate. I'm not
Yeah.
being an asshole here, but upon further reflection and looking
Mhm.
at the tone of
Mhm.
the Batgirl series itself, and being that it isn't even her origin, or it may not even be part of that particular Batgirl mythos. Again, that isn't confirmed. It's very hard to figure out. First of all, you said the comic books are like goddamn soap operas anymore, and they always have been to some extent.
Right.
But
But there's a lot of retconning. There's a lot of...
it's
Because they got rid of Barbara Gordon's paralysis.
And that's,
she still has the psychological trauma from the events of the Killing Joke, but the paralysis was not permanent.
here's my argument, and I'm not familiar with the whole arc of the Batgirl series. If it's a part of her character, they had to include it, in my opinion. If it is not a major component of her character, her backstory, her present psychology, fine.
Right.
Then you could make the argument it has no place. It
Right.
just was an homage that
Right.
didn't quite fit.
Yeah.
But again, if it's a part of her story, I would argue it's probably one of the most essential parts of her character background, and it should have been included. If that's the case, that's my nuance.
And if I'm not mistaken, in the New 52, the events of the Killing Joke still happened, but like I said, the paralysis was temporary, not permanent. And this has been one of those, I guess you could kind of say women in refrigerators. This trope was Gamergate of comics, but without the internet. Because, granted, this was an early internet website. This was 1999. This website came on, so long before social media.
Yeah.
This website did not have, Facebook, Twitter, not even MySpace to sort of propel it. It relied on, message boards and email and the old school
chat rooms.
Chat rooms.
Remember chat rooms?
Yeah, so this did not. So had this website been created in 2009, I think we'd be having a very different discussion, because this information would have...
Yeah, there is, I believe, it's a completely legitimate argument.
Right.
And women have not been treated well in comic books. And today, you see on social media, women involved with video game culture,
Right.
comic book culture, they get the short end of the stick.
Right, and there's...
No doubt.
Right, they do. And especially, in comic books, a lot of the heroes are men, so it's difficult. In some cases,
Lady
it's different.
Thor. Remember that? And
then there's a huge controversy over that.
Yeah.
And the idea was whoever wields Thor's hammer shall have the power of Thor.
Yeah.
So theoretically, anybody could pick up that goddamn hammer,
including a woman,
and have that power. Now, granted, not everybody can, handle the power.
correct?
But
Like Excalibur,
right? But it's not. That was not intrinsic to, Thor cannot only be a man. Somebody can wield the power of Thor, and now, granted, you're not going to have, I'm not saying Batman needs to become a woman, but characters like Batgirl are important, and largely Batgirl's been a very positive, strong character. But that's not to say that she should...
I personally view it like this. If they would have included the Killing Joke storyline, I could honestly see Batgirl being one of the most positive portrayals for strong heroines in comic books. If her whole story arc is dealing with that traumatic event, the gender violence that was inflicted upon her by the Joker... And her overcoming that, the paralysis, overcoming, the psychological trauma, that to me is amazing. That's an amazing storyline. Again, I don't know if that's what they're doing, but to me, it would seem like if that was the road they were going, bravo. That is something I would absolutely read.
Right, and I don't believe that female characters in comics should be treated with kids' gloves when it comes to moments of...
It's an awful fucking world.
Right, moments of violent and peril. And, granted, do every single female character does she need to be killed or maimed or raped?
No, of course
no. Does she need to be overtly sexualized? No. But are we to say that these characters should never be, met with some kind of violence that their other counterparts do?
You're right. It's a real world problem, and all you have to do is take a look at how women are treated on Twitter. Look at the way that the Lady Ghostbusters.
Right, and look at what Alyssa Milano's doing. She's actually using the court system to go after some of the more vulgar and violent threats. And some of these men on Twitter have been like, "Oh, why are you doing that?" Well, if you're harassed hourly with disgusting comments, and with her, the uptick was, a lot of these bro types dislike that she's a well-informed woman in sports. She's a huge sports fan, basketball, baseball. I think she loves just about everything, and she's very well-informed. She's a big fan, and some of these macho jock types hate that there's a woman who probably knows a lot more about basketball than they do.
You can look at the way Ashley Judd gets treated.
Right.
I mean, it's horrific. So I understand the arguments, absolutely. But it is a very complicated, nuanced subject. It truly is. And my big concern was, again, if it was a part of her story, it's a great story. It is about overcoming gender violence. It's a real problem out there, and honestly, I think that there aren't enough stories in comic books. If Batgirl were to use the history of gender violence perpetuated against women, and use Batgirl as a way to overcome that, and acknowledge, yes, this shit has happened to our female characters, but no more. They're going to take it head on. They're going to overcome it, and they're going to beat the shit out of those motherfucking jokers.
And when that character, when she was paralyzed, subsequent writers, after the events of the Killing Joke, they did not let her fall into obscurity, which very easily could have happened. They still wrote very strong storylines for her. They still used her character. She was still a big part of the Batman myth. So in some cases, I do think a very good writer can reclaim these characters and prevent them from falling into obscurity, because very easily she could have just been tossed to the side.
Yeah, as is the case. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about next, of course, is
the confirmed synopsis for Civil War.
Yes. While we're still on comic book news, we're going to... I'll give you the brief little snippet that they put out about the actual basic concept behind the Civil War. For those who are familiar with the Civil War, this is going to come as no surprise. There aren't any deep spoilers in what I'm about to mention, but I'll forewarn you, when we talk about the rumors, there may be potential spoilers. Again, none of these are confirmed, but just be aware that there are potential spoilers.
Right. Because some of these events have happened in the comics, so if they're drawing from these storylines, these may be considered spoilers, and some of these things may happen. But as of right now, it's total speculation, because Disney Marvel could totally go in another direction for the films.
Absolutely. So the synopsis that's out there for Civil War is: following the events of Age of Ultron, the collective governments of the world pass an act designed to regulate all superhuman activity. This polarizes opinion amongst the Avengers, using two factions to side with Iron Man or Captain America, which causes an epic battle between former allies.
Which is pretty much the basic plot line of Civil War, only in that one, if I'm not mistaken, it's the United States government, not the world government, so the scope of this film has been expanded globally.
Greatly expanded.
Yeah, which I guess allows a character like Black Panther to get involved.
Yeah, and I think that, we live in a global world. It's a different world from when the comic book was written. So, real quick, some of the characters that are going to be included in Civil War, obviously Captain America, but also Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Black Panther. It will also feature Hulk, Thor, War Machine, Scarlet Witch, Wasp, and a 14-year-old Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man.
Yes. And did you mention Quicksilver?
Yeah.
Was he mentioned?
Not in this paragraph,
yes,
but Quicksilver
and that's part.
Also.
Well, that's part of the speculation. There's a rumor, and this is a spoiler, The word is that in the early drafts of Age of Ultron, Quicksilver is killed.
Yeah.
And there is a rumor that, not so much rumor, but there's been conjecture that not all of the Avengers are making it out of Age of Ultron, and that the Avengers team is going to look different. I believe that has been confirmed, that I believe Disney Marvel has come out and said that the Avengers, it's not going to be the same people going in that are coming out of that movie. So things are going to be different. I believe some characters are kind of going off. We're going into some more spoilers here, but I believe Thor is supposed to leave the Avengers at the end of that film.
You're talking about Civil War? Or
no, Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
Yes, because the third Thor movie, Ragnarok, pretty much Thor, the idea here is he has to go back to Asgard to deal with some stuff.
Yeah.
So that third movie is probably going to be, the timeline, I'm guessing, Ragnarok and Civil War kind of overlapping timeline-wise.
Yeah.
Because that Thor movie is going to be a primarily Asgardian story, which I think is long overdue, because both of the previous Thor movies, they took place a lot on Earth. And we only got we got glimpses of Asgard, but we didn't get enough. So I think a full Asgardian film will be quite apt. Now, it's going to be, back to Civil War though, Iron Man versus Captain America, with Iron Man being the villain of this piece. He's going to be the antagonist. As we know in the storyline, it ends with Captain America being assassinated. And this is something we talked about earlier, where perhaps the way of getting Chris Evans out of these movies, because he kind of said that after he's done with Captain America, he wants to go into directing. He doesn't want to act anymore. He wants to try some new things. So
he wants to be the new Clint Eastwood.
Right.
He really does.
And killing off his character, as they do in the comic book, it's a way for him to get out of that it's a way for him to walk away from these movies without somebody going, oh, where's Steve Rogers? Where's Captain America? Where's Chris Evans? Lets him get out of it, and also lets some of these other superheroes get some bigger screen time. The
other rumor, though, is
the rumor about the young Peter Parker. That's interesting. Being a 14-year-old.
Yeah, this is going to be a younger Peter Parker. But here's some of the other thing. Certain sources out there are saying that a bunch of the Avengers are going to be sitting out Infinity War Part 1.
Yes.
Which means Marvel wants to take them basically out of, off the shared universe board until they, with Captain America, return in Part 2 of Infinity War. So there's a lot of things going on right now, and what that tells me is either Captain America could die at the end of Civil War, or no, he won't, and he will make it to at least Infinity Wars Part 2.
Now, I will say that since these rumors came out, there have been some that are saying that some of these rumors are untrue. So it's a lot of speculation at this point. But it's believable speculation. It's fun speculation. Because I believe Badass Digest is disputing the rumors that Bleeding Cool was saying.
Oh yeah, these two, they're going at each other.
Yeah, because Bleeding Cool was kind of going along with Quicksilver does not make it out of the Avengers and some other rumors, but one of the writers of Badass Digest has come out and said their rumors are untrue. So
and I think Badass Digest is putting their neck out, saying that their guess is that they believe that the events of Civil War will result with there being no more Captain America. He's either dead or retired, or possibly taking on the position of Nomad or something like that.
Right, and I don't think, I'm just scrolling here, I don't think Badass Digest has retracted any of their rumors. I think they're still rolling with them. And it is a lot of hearsay and kind of looking at what has happened in the comics, but some of this you have to think is going to sort of happen.
Yeah. So what does that mean for Infinity War Part 1? That could mean that some of the characters featured are going to be more or less the newer characters. You know, your Doctor Strange, the new Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, may take center stage in Infinity War Part 1, only for Part 2 to have some of the big guns return, basically. That's some of the other theories going out there right now. But time will ultimately tell.
And we'll get more news because May 1st is rapidly approaching.
Mm-hmm.
We're almost a month away from Age of Ultron, and once that comes out, I think that'll kind of settle some of these rumors, especially as to who the new team is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think by the end of Age of Ultron, we will have a little bit more hints about the direction that the Marvel Universe is going to go in.
Right, and from the previews that I've seen, it does seem like they, at least with this film, they're going a little bit darker, like maybe this is going to be the Empire Strikes Back of... Because not only visually it's darker, there's a lot of grays, a lot of dark colors, but the way they're going with James Spader's Ultron from these previews seems to be very cold, very bloodthirsty, very... very evil.
Yeah.
Whereas it does not seem like it's going to be the more,
Shakespearean, android.
Right, and it's not going to, it seems like the stakes are a little bit more real, and it's not going to be as popcorn lighthearted as the Avengers is at times. It seems like they're going to be putting a lot of these characters in more dangerous situations, and it just seems like the tensions between the heroes are growing, and it's going to snap. If it's going to snap in Ultron, that remains to be seen, but it seems like the groundwork for the rivalry and tension between Captain America and Iron Man are going to come to a head in this film.
Yeah, so my question, though, is this, before we move on to our next topic.
Yes.
After Infinity Wars Part 2...
Yes. Is that the last one that they've lined up for 2019? Yeah.
What do you think is the next step for Marvel? Are they done? Did they milk that cow, or is there a second act for?
There are certainly films that can happen. Now,
are they going to be as grand in scope as what we have?
That I don't know. Now, Does Sony owns the entire Spider-Man property, right?
I believe so.
Okay,
well, joint venture.
I mean, the only thing, the character. Right. The only thing I could think of is maybe, as far as the movies goes, I mean, if maybe Marvel eventually gets Spider-Man back and they can do a Sinister Six movie, unless Sony does that first. I mean, you can have. There are certainly storylines.
I'll tell you right now, if Suicide Squad does well,
there'll be
Sony's going to do the Sinister Six.
I mean, there are plenty of characters to pull from, but you're delving into some of the deeper characters. Though, maybe the smart thing is let it sit for a couple years and then go back to it.
Let it sit for a couple of years. Those are words that don't quite leave a good impression in Hollywood. I don't think Hollywood is capable of letting anything sit. I could be wrong, but I'm just looking at the way that the industry,
they may certainly
works.
I think it's going to depend on box office figures.
Yeah.
If they're seeing like a steady decline throughout these last set of films, maybe they do let it sit. Maybe they could do a total reboot. They could also do one of the.
There's always the reboot.
They could just instantly do the total reboot. But I mean, how many times do you want to see?
That's the thing.
Like them fight the same. Now, granted, there are a lot of villains that you could see them go up against. Like, you can certainly do. There's a lot more Iron Man villains that you didn't get to see yet. Captain America villains, Thor villains.
When are they going to find? Who owns Fantastic Four?
I believe Fox.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, Fox is putting that out.
Because here's the thing. I mean, if there's any other villain out there, aside from Thanos, that can get like the entire superhero force to be in like a tizzy, it would be Doctor Doom
and Galactus.
And,
well, Galactus kind of. when he comes to devour your
My
world.
theory about him is that he just doesn't make a great villain.
Not on screen.
No, not on screen.
It's not. It's too. It's a little too fantastical.
Yeah, you need a personality-driven villain.
And they tried it in that Silver Surfer movie. It was just awful.
No,
Him as
work.
like no.
Maybe it was just that rendition, but it's even hard for me, like even as a writer. To
Yes,
contemplate.
20th Century Fox is.
Yeah, so it's really hard for me to actually think about how Galactus can work in a movie.
Right, but I will say,
but Doctor Doom is
Right.
the other main Marvel villain that could be possibly
Do you like
the next
what they're
big bad.
Do you like what they're doing with Doom for the Fantastic Four reboot?
I liked the trailer.
But do you know what they're doing with Doom though?
I heard something. It better not be an android or something. Is it an android?
No, he's supposed to be an antisocial programmer known as Doom.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're kind of playing it as he's an evil computer programmer who becomes Doctor Doom. Well, Doom, they have.
I really liked the trailer for
Right.
Fantastic Four. I need to see what they're doing with Doom.
Right,
I
because
hope
they're
they
not-
don't make him into Julian Assange or something like that.
They're
I don't
not.
know.
I'll tell
I'll
you
have to
what.
see it.
From what I've seen, I don't even think they're referring to him as Doctor Doom. They're just calling him Doom, as his internet handle.
I'll have to see it. But again,
The trailer does look promising, and they
The
are going to
trailer
be
looked great.
and they are going to be using, from what I heard, the original costumes.
yeah. Well, Miles Teller came out and said that.
Right,
there
and they
was
do
gonna be-
look a little. My one issue is they do look a little young.
Well, okay.
But-
Think about it though. That's the.
I know
nature
that's
of the
I know
beast.
that's the thing, but that's my one little gripe. But I can get over that if Doctor Doom looks good.
Yeah.
But if he's
If he's Julian Assange, I
Right.
don't know how I'm going to feel about it.
right, does he need the mask?
Yeah. Yeah. There is
I
no
agree.
Doctor Doom without
Yeah.
that.
Do you think they would try to make him maskless?
Well, I don't. That's the thing. I mean, you're
Because
talking
I could
about-
see- I could
Is he
s-
going to be like a cyberspace? Is it going to be like a cyberpunk Doom or
That's, you know what? I'm just throwing
Matrix
this out here,
Doom?
but I would not be surprised if they kind of do like a Wizard of Oz thing where he's some computer guy hiding behind a screen and his online image, this cyberspace avatar, is the Doctor Doom mask.
Well,
And he-
hopefully, in the next venture, when Fox joins Disney in some kind of joint venture, they'll kind of glide over that. Then,
hopefully
they have.
hopefully that's not what they're doing.
I don't know how I feel about that. Again, I'll have to see it.
Right.
I'll reserve all total judgment. But I'm telling you right now, it's just not. I'm not feeling it.
Right.
I'm not feeling it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
Right.
I'll be proven wrong. I've been proven wrong before.
Yeah.
You know, but who knows?
Yeah, but I'm sure Marvel will have something. Now, speaking of the future,
Oh.
the future of television is at hand.
The future of television, indeed, and this sort of bleeds into another topic. But go right ahead with this one.
So over
You
the
goddamn
past
cord cutter.
couple weeks, more and more ventures are coming up with internet streaming TV. You have HBO Now, which will bring HBO to people who do not have to subscribe to cable.
Only through Apple, though, correct? Apple TV.
Apple is the launch. Eventually, it will come to other services.
How long? I felt
That's
like,
unknown.
I felt like Apple pushed hard to get at least like a long-term contract.
They
with it.
probably have at the very least the first month or two.
Oh, I thought it was longer than that.
It could be, but as of right now, when HBO Now
I
launches,
honestly heard
it's going
that
to
it
be
might
Apple
be
TV.
exclusive to Apple TV.
I doubt it. HBO would lose too much money by not selling that content to like Microsoft and Sony, and
Yeah.
as big as Apple is, I think people would be stubborn enough to either continue to use and share HBO Go passwords before they go and buy an Apple TV, because if they already have a PlayStation and an Xbox and God knows what else, not to mention the Amazon Fire Stick, Google Chromecast, all that stuff, I think there's just too many ventures for HBO not to get their feet into.
I mean, true.
But I do see Apple paying a pretty penny to be the first
That's what I mean.
servicer for the first couple of months.
They have a ton of money.
Right. And I
feel like they
believe
might have gotten some kind of contract.
Right.
Maybe not totally exclusive, but for a good amount of time.
Right. They're going to be doing if you want to watch Game of Thrones and you don't have any way to get HBO Go or HBO, you're going to have to buy an Apple TV at this point for HBO now, which is only I think $14.99 a month, $15, right around that ballpark.
Yeah.
Which is a couple dollars less than the HBO add-on is for cable. But it's not as expensive as getting cable just to get HBO, which is what makes it attractive to people.
Yes.
Now, Sony is launching PlayStation Vue, which is a pay TV service. Fortune has a great article on it.
So explain this to me. You have to obviously own a PlayStation to access it.
And this is from Tom Huddleston Jr. on Fortune.com. He has a great breakdown of some of these services. So how Vue is going to work, it's going to have live television streaming and on-demand streaming. They're going to have more than 50 channels, including some major broadcasts and cable networks. But you do need a PS3 or a PS4. But it's only launching initially in 3 test cities.
Yeah.
So this service is kind of in test mode right now, so there may be a lot of changes coming to it.
I think a lot of changes are coming, period.
Right. Now, here's the thing with PlayStation Vue. How much do you think it costs?
A month?
A month. Base price.
Give me a hint. Is it comparable to...
It is not comparable to HBO Now. It is not comparable to Sling TV.
What about Hulu?
It is not comparable to Hulu.
What the hell is it?
It is $50 a month.
$50?
Yes.
That's a cable bill.
Yes. Practically, yes. Because most basic cable bills, at least in this area in Northeast Pennsylvania, basic cable nets you roughly $35 a month.
So why should I go from cable to this?
That I don't know.
What?
Which makes it weird because, if you just want HBO Now, if you're one of these people who do not watch a lot of stations, who like to watch them on your own time.
What happened to the dream, the panacea of having a la carte services where
that
if you
seems
just
to be
want AMC, if you just want FX or
right.
And you don't want, because here's the thing that has pissed me the fuck off for years. Cable prices have always been inflated because of one thing and one thing only: sports channels. They have always artificially inflated your cable bill. That is why that's where most of the cost is coming from. I don't watch sports. I don't give a fuck. So, but I'm still paying for all these bullshit channels that I have no need for in my life. I really was looking forward to that a la carte service, and now it seems like that's quickly dissipating at this point.
PlayStation Vue.
Maybe I'm overreacting, but
PlayStation Vue, the lineup is going to include stations like CBS, Fox, NBC, Comedy Central, Discovery, Food Network, MTV, and they are planning to add AMC, so it's not going to be available right off the bat. Now, like we were saying about sports, for an extra $10 a month, you get your local sports channels, and Dish and DirecTV do the same thing. It does cost extra for satellite servicers to give you your local sports.
a cost I don't pay.
Right. Now, for $70 a month, which is roughly with not too far off from your expanded basic cable cost, that gives you more lifestyle channels like cooking and VH1.
Yeah.
But
this is a lot.
But speaking of sports, the Sony thing, they do not have ABC and ESPN, and they don't have them right now because they're owned by Disney.
Why would because they're competitors.
Right. And
this is where this gets all so fucking messy.
Yeah.
Because all these companies are like content providers at this point.
Right.
And they're all competing with each other.
Now, Dish, and this is the one that seemed to be opening the gates for the more cost-effective cord-cutting, Sling TV. That's $20 a month as the base package. It's only 20 stations. But there's stations that someone like myself would watch, like Dish. AMC, ESPN, TBS, TNT. They don't have your major broadcast networks like ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC. But you know what? I get them on a satellite, on an antenna rather, and I also get their content through Hulu Plus.
Okay.
Now, Sling TV is only available right now on Roku and Amazon TV, and Xbox One, I'm not entirely sure about 360. I don't see why not. But so that's so a $30 swing for cutting the cord. To me, Sling TV seems to be a little bit more attractive as an option. Sling TV right now does not have any DVR, so it's only live TV.
Yeah.
And that to some people is a turnoff. It does not really have a lot of the View is going to have DVR for certain programs, but not everything.
This is getting so goddamn complicated. Like you have to know calculus now to figure out how you're going to get your TV content.
And of course, Apple is getting into the game as well.
Yeah.
Like we said, they're going to be at launch the standalone option for HBO Now, but they're going to be offering a subscription TV service, which is going to be roughly 25 channels. I think they're launching this fall, if I'm not mistaken. But that cost is rumored to be between $20 and $40. There's no word on what that's going to be. Now, according to Tom Huddleston's Fortune article, the early rumor is it's going to include the major broadcast networks, Sans, NBC, Universal, but that may change. So the one big difference Apple's going with is you can get all five, well, at least right now, all four major broadcast networks, maybe NBC if they throw them some more money.
How much is the price for this stuff?
Rumored between 20 and 40.
That, again.
And HBO is 15.
An extra?
Or is that no, HBO... I don't know if that's going to be part of a package with Apple TV. Probably not. So though who knows? Maybe there will be some kind of Apple HBO special. But if you want HBO right now, and you have an Apple TV, like the actual, the physical Apple TV,
yeah,
and you don't want to pay extra, and you don't have cable, that'll cost you only $15 a month, which is not bad for that. Like Amazon Prime, you get HBO content, but it's older content. It's stuff like The Sopranos, The Wire, 6 Feet Under, shows that are long, great shows, but they're long done. Whereas HBO Now is going to give you those older shows, but it's also going to give you the new stuff like Last Week Tonight, Looking Girls, True Detective, Game of Thrones, the movies as well.
I don't know why we're not getting paid for all of this advertisement, but
we should be with how we're talking up these stations.
So, all right, cord cutter.
Yes.
This is your thing now, right? I mean, is this the direction you don't have cable, correct?
I do not have cable.
All right, what do you have?
Right now my setup is I have an antenna, which does get me the 5 major broadcast.
Okay.
I pay for Hulu Plus, which is $8 a month.
Right.
So I can watch on my own time.
You have Netflix?
I have Netflix as well.
Okay.
And I like Hulu, and I know I can sit down at 8 o'clock and watch whatever the fuck is on ABC.
Right, and that's the brand.
I don't always want to, and that's why
live viewing. You don't like you're not
right. I'm not a
viewer.
live viewer, and HBO Plus allows me to sit down on my couch and watch a new show like Empire that I was way late into the game to.
As was I.
And Netflix, I do subscribe to that because I love the selection of films.
I've noticed I've actually enjoyed shows more when I binge watch them.
Agreed. I do find that because it's, I get into them more. Maybe it's the memory thing. Maybe it's difficult for some people to remember. And when you're watching like 5-6 shows at a time,
yeah, you're in that world.
Sometimes it's different.
You connect to it much more.
Yeah, it's difficult to remember what happened on Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, Mad Men, Game of Thrones when you're watching them week to week.
Yeah.
If you sit down and watch an entire season of a show over the course of a week, like with Empire,
it's like living in that world.
Exactly,
really
and especially shows with great characters.
Yes,
like Better Call Saul, Empire, and Game of Thrones, and also shows that are immersive like that.
That's the key word right there. Immersive worlds.
And I think I don't know what the future is. You know what the future is going to be. I have a hint.
Yes. I got a hint, and, while cord cutting sounds wonderful,
right,
fucking assholes might be ruining everything because an article first came out in the Wall Street Journal, and Deadline put it up with the headline, "Will HBO, Showtime, and Sony find a way around the FCC's net neutrality rules?" So what this means is, with all of these new streaming services and all that, the crux of the argument is this: streaming TV services can potentially find a way to sidestep the net neutrality rules. How? Well, HBO, Showtime, and Sony are jumping into the world of online television. But instead of putting it in the mainstream, web traffic, that is going to be a public utility, or what we're referring to as the public internet, they want to basically create a separate lane, if you will, that would basically grant their content special treatment. Now, this is a topic that I was a little hesitant about bringing up because it is such a wonky, real tech kind of conversation. But I feel like, and I'm the first to admit that I don't totally understand all of these rules. I'll just read a little bit from the Deadline article. This is the Deadline article entitled, "Will HBO, Showtime, and Sony Find a Way Around the FCC's Net Neutrality?" It's by Dave Liebman. And he writes, "It's still mostly a theoretical issue, but Comcast, the largest broadband provider, seems really cool to the idea, especially while the FCC and Justice Department weigh its $45 billion plan to buy Time Warner Cable. Net neutrality supporters were outraged in 2012 when it offered its Xfinity on-demand service through the Xbox game consoles as a, quote, managed service instead of a conventional internet one. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings noted at the time that viewers using his platform could run up against their broadband usage caps while Comcast customers on the Xbox would not. The discussion is relevant again after the FCC adopted tough new net neutrality rules, helping to clear the way for scores of companies to launch internet video services. Here's the challenge. Cable operators funnel all of the content that we associate with the web on the same coaxial wire. Now here's the tech jargon. Coaxial wire that provides their non-internet TV channels, phone, home security, business, etc., etc. But the various forms of content play under different rules. Operators can make sure that the HBO TV channel looks great, but can't do the same for the HBO Now online service. That would change, though, if HBO Now became a managed service, or, and this is key, in FCC parlance, a non-broadband internet access service, aka non-bias. Regulators open internet order anticipates the possibility that companies might seek a non-bias designation to get a leg up on rivals. The FCC says it will closely scrutinize the non-bias services and their impact on competition, particularly ones that are similar to applications and services offered over broadband internet access service. So, while all of this cord-cutting talk sounds great, we could feasibly be digging our own grave.
Right. Well, it's
for net neutrality.
For the consumer, there seems to be no good end for us to get our content, because the one reality is, if we want our content, we have to pay astronomical costs to cable companies to get the one fucking channel we want to watch.
Yeah.
Or we're going to be throttled because we're going to be using all of our bandwidth to watch everything we want to see over the internet.
Now, the companies are going to say, well, cheap-ass Tony Thomas, you're just one of those, little like thieves that wants everything for free, and you gotta pay to play. You have to realize that everything has a cost. You are getting your services through the internet. Most of the internet traffic is being caused now by basically people watching TV.
Mostly like Netflix and things like that.
And stuff like that. People watching TV through internet services. So they're going to go and say to you, well, you got to pay for it somehow. You know, you've basically killed cable. Cable was the old paradigm. You guys have killed that, but right now we're in this little zone now where basically with net neutrality, the bandwidth that's being used, it's almost, they view it as not being technically paid for.
Right. Now, I can... Where I see this eventually going is internet costs may rise to accommodate service providers providing more technology for bandwidth consumption, because it's going to go up, and I think that's some places use like a 250 gig cap a month, which for your average two people, that is probably plenty.
Here's what I see, and to make an analogy between sort of like how the way healthcare works in the European market. They have a public plan, basically, a universal system, but there also exists private hospitals still. Sort of like, remember when they wanted to do a public option here in the States? Yes, you would have a public option, but you would also have the option to have a private doctor if you want. Very much like, public schools versus private schools. I think, and that really is the best analogy. There's going to be a public internet like there are public schools. The public internet, though, may not run quite as well as it is right now. If more of these content providers set up a separate lane, so to speak, and become sort of you would be getting the private internet almost.
Right.
It's almost like they're creating a private internet with these managed services or non-bias titles under the FCCC. And you're going to pay a little more, but it's going to work faster, and it seems like that's the way it's going right now. And I know, how do you feel about that? Because I know you're a cheap bastard.
I'm not a cheap bastard. I just don't like being taken advantage by big corporations.
Look, yeah, I know, but I think it's everybody's fault. I really do.
It is. It's a little bit of everything, because you have those people, and I'm not one of those people. I will pay for content that I want to pay for, and what I mean by that is, I don't want to be burdened by. I don't like watching movies on my computer. I have a 22-inch screen, something around there. I don't like watching movies on it. I like watching movies on a big screen.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pirate movies to watch on my computer. I don't want to pirate television to watch on my computer. And I know I can hook up, the laptop, the computer to the TV. However, with pirated copies, you do lose some quality. And you do lose some quality with streaming, but not as much. And if it's something I really like, I will buy a physical copy of it. DVDs is one of those areas, DVDs, Blu-rays, that's one of those areas where I'm not okay with digitally owning them. And I know there's this wave of people who, eschewed owning physical copies of movies because they got the ultraviolet, or they buy the, I don't like that.
For me, it depends on the movie.
If I love a movie and I like it, I want a physical copy of it.
I'm probably going to always own a Star Wars movie.
Right. I want to. Now, granted, if I could copy all of my movies onto a convenient hard drive, so I could watch them without pulling out a disc, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. But
I like owning a physical copy. Same with certain music, and I like going to see artists that I like in concert. Because and granted, some of these DVD releases too. You're paying $20 for a poorly made case with a disc that has just the film, very few special features. So even then, there are some movies that I won't buy.
Yeah. I mean, look,
they know where to get you.
Yeah.
Just like anything. Now, I will say that I'm not one of those people who feel entitled to own all of these properties just because I can, or just because I don't want to pay $10 for a movie ticket. which the movie ticket prices are also going up. But we're coming to a point where both sides are going to collide, because you just can't have like unlimited bandwidth. That's just not feasibly possible.
Right.
So it's either going to be, you're going to have to make decisions as a consumer what you watch, like how you use your bandwidth. It might come down to that. It might also come down to you having to buy a service. And I think, they're not so much threatened by things like Hulu, because there's, various deals and whatnot, and the ratings on Hulu go into the final ratings of shows like Empire. Half of the people are watching it live. The other half, or you got 10 million people, like 9 million people watching it live. The other 9 million are watching it in a couple days of its release. And as that show went on, just for an example, the base it built. But certainly I don't want to see the world where we're having to pick and choose what we watch just because the costs become so astronomical.
And it does seem, I hate to say it, but it does kind of look like that's the direction it's going right now. Again, that could change with government. If there are good people in government that are loyal to the consumers more than they are to the content providers, you may see something like that occur. So in the next topic, our last topic for the day, is more news that will piss off Tony Thomas.
Yeah.
The rumors now abound about StubHub, which everybody knows for, getting their tickets for concerts and, live events and some sports events and stuff like that, might be getting into the movie theater business, in the sense that they would be selling movie tickets for, certain events, perhaps all events, who knows. This has already happened, by the way, even without a former deal. According to Business Insider, the movie tickets have already hit secondary brokers in recent years. When Regal Cinema's 4DX Theater opened in Los Angeles, tickets for Transformers Age of Extinction landed on StubHub. This is what got AEG, who's had a relationship with StubHub since 2012, thinking outside the box. They didn't really expect it, but it actually had a positive reaction, at least from the theater's perspective. Now, here's the little thing. Again, this looks like it would be better for theaters, because in recent years, theaters have been struggling to fill seats.
Right.
If anybody could fill seats, it's StubHub.
Right.
But the caveat, of course, is this going to be good for consumers?
Right.
Looking to get a ticket on an opening weekend showing, for instance.
Right.
Imagine a scenario where, StubHub buys out the whole screening, for instance, and then starts selling the tickets at like a premium price.
Now the idea,
big thing, of course, is Star Wars:
that's
The Force Awakens.
Now, here's the thing: is the idea here that StubHub would be another seller of tickets like Fandango, where they could sell, tickets kind of like in that venue, or is this going to be where, for example, in the fear with Star Wars, and especially in big cities, is this going to allow somebody with the money to buy, premiums like the middle row, like reserved seats, or they could buy out the whole theater and then scalp the tickets for double or triple?
I think if I were StubHub, I would target special events, special event movies. For instance, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to come up with the scenario that StubHub is really going to be looking at Star Wars: The Force Awakens in the big theaters, like in New York City and Los Angeles. They could stand to make a shit ton of money if they bought out the entire theater. All right? Mm-hmm. All the showings for the opening weekend, for instance. And they would set it up like you would like a concert. The seats that are... What would you say are the most desirable seats in a theater?
Well, the middle rows.
Middle rows.
Yeah.
Not the top or...
Well, I'm saying like through the middle. Like
through the middle?
From the bottom, rising up through the middle. With obviously, some people like being the very first middle.
Right.
Some people like being in the middle of the middle.
I think it would probably be like, let the
and
market
top middle.
decide what people
But
want.
I think most anal fans, anal moviegoers, they want a middle seat somewhere going from the very first seat all the way to the back.
Yeah.
Now, Pete Cetera on Slash Film did a piece on this, and he mentioned there's two possibilities how this could be good or bad, and they both make sense because it could be great for theaters who want to.
I think it's going to be undoubtedly great for theaters in certain instances.
What he cited were things like, when theaters try and fill seats for like Broadway showings, matinees. The opera stuff when theaters are trying to fill seats for off-peak kind of shows when business is slow, that can work. And he mentions that Sub has done this with concerts where they'll sell discounted tickets to fill the events.
Yes.
So I can see that being a positive where not a lot of people are buying tickets to the afternoon showing of Madame Butterfly. They're streaming,
so they're taking a hit, even though they're in a way they're selling
right. Like because a lot of theaters like Cinemark, even these other chains, they'll do.
I was about to say
live stream. They'll do like not. I don't think they're live stream it. They'll play Broadway shows. They'll do concerts.
Here's my question: do you think this StubHub thing is going to affect local theaters?
I think the. Probably where it's going to see a bigger hit are going to be big cities like Los Angeles, New York.
But let's say like Cinemark at Montage Mountain or RC Theaters here in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
I don't know. That would be because, God, I don't know. I don't know how it would affect us here. Now,
I feel like for certain events, like, again,
right.
Star Wars 7.
Right, but this is where it's going to hurt consumers.
Okay.
Because, I'll say this happens at concerts all the time. You have scalpers and a lot of them can manipulate computers to buy tickets. This happened with Bruce Springsteen a couple years ago on Ticketmaster. Scalpers purchased up a lot of tickets, and within minutes, they were going for triple, quadruple the face value.
Yeah.
Now, granted, supply and demand, if people don't want to buy a 4,000 ticket, eventually has to be lowered in price, otherwise it's not going to sell. But there are stupid people in this world who have money, who will pay an exorbitant amount of money to see something.
Yeah. That
being said, I guess my worry as a moviegoer is entering scenarios where midnight releases, Friday night releases get bought out by scalpers, and
that's what's going to happen.
And you're going to,
especially unquestionably in the big cities.
Yeah. Now, granted, perhaps there are going to be ways to avoid this. Like, I don't have a problem with somebody who buys a ticket for the midnight showing of Star Wars 7 and can't go, so he has to sell it.
Yeah. My
problem is somebody buying, the entire upper half of the theater and charging people $50. Now, granted, some people will go and pay.
I hate to say this, but that could happen because, funny story, I actually did something quite like that to be a dick when I was in high school. We had this big research paper on some Civil War event or something. So what did I do? I rented out all of the books on that topic at the local library, and I started charging my friends money to rent the books for me.
Right.
And I feel like some asshole like me is going to do that, even on a local level, perhaps, and start selling these tickets at premium prices. That could happen, even without StubHub.
Right. And,
I don't know if that's illegal.
I don't...
I don't know.
I think special screenings will work. Yeah. But here's the other thing, and I was actually reading a comment on this. This is from Muddy 900 on Slash Film. He brings up an interesting point.
Muddy 900.
So
what does Muddy 900 bring up?
So live events like concerts and sports events, they're scarce.
Yeah.
Springsteen's not going to come around every year.
Right.
It's not every year that you can drive down. If you want to see a specific sports game, you have to go to that game. Like if this is a playoff implication game, that's only happening for that moment. Those are scarce, which kind of drives up the price for those things, like the Super Bowl, the playoff games.
But you're going to say that movies are every weekend.
Movies are every weekend. There's always an option. And how likely is it going to be that some rich asshole is going to buy out, 3,000 screens in a 20-mile radius and charge 3 times the price?
Probably not. But
who's going to really buy out the 1 o'clock showing week 4?
It would have to be StubHub, and StubHub would probably target, again, opening weekends. And I think that what's going to happen ultimately, if this does blow up and this becomes like a regular thing, that opening weekend isn't going to be an option for everybody anymore. It's going to be just like people that opt out of going to see a movie in a movie theater and say, I'll Redbox it. It's going to be like, I'll week 3 it. If they really want to see it in the theater, it's going to be that reaction. I'll week 3 it.
Right. The other thing, like if these are going to be sold directly through StubHub, like a Fandango kind of thing, I guess what could happen is a certain number of tickets are reserved. Like they know how many the theater knows how many seats they can sell at their box office. Like if 100 tickets go to can be bought on Fandango and 100 here, they know when that ticket booth opens, this is how many seats we have until we're sold out of this screening.
I just want, before we close up here, I just want to know one thing and one thing only. Is this StubHub thing going to make people less fuckheads or more fuckhead-ish in the movie theater if they're paying all that money, do you think?
Well, if they're paying all that money, perhaps they act less fuckheadish. But then again, money does not buy class. And we all know what happened a couple weeks ago when Conrad Hilton lost his mind on a fucking airplane.
What a fuckhead he is.
So, I would like to think that because people are paying more for a movie ticket, they'll be better behaved. But then again, you might run into more people who, you get into these, the rich entitled asshole types.
I just want to go to a theater and not have to deal with a fucking asshole on their phone all the goddamn movie. That is all I want to do. But maybe it's impossible.
Maybe that's how we make this work. Maybe the stipulation is if you want to buy a ticket on StubHub, you have to hand in your phone.
I really, I can't say this enough. I should end every single episode we do with this. If I'm going to go to a movie theater, I don't want to deal with fucking assholes. I don't. I really don't. It is becoming a major part of my decision of whether to see.
Agreed, and it's getting worse.
Yeah, and the movies where people are going to be assholes.
Right, and your horror movies. You might as for most horror movies.
And horror is like
I love.
Aside from sci-fi fantasy, horror is my favorite genre.
Yeah, and it sucks because you go to a horror movie and you get gaggles of asshole teenagers talking on their phones. You get people that talk back to the movie. You get people taking phone calls in the middle of the theater. People going up and down. It's awful.
I can't fucking do it. I can't fucking do it.
I can't remember the last time I saw a horror movie where there was not some jackass in the audience. And that's going back to when the Omen remake came out. I had to get my friend and I who saw that movie. We had to get the people behind us yelled at by an usher. Well, by the ticket attendant. We had to go get her. She came in and yelled at them, and that was I think 9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm a horror fan, and I really think that horror, especially, it's such a fragile genre. I mean, if it's an R-rated, I mean,
but then you get college kids.
Yeah,
it seems like the only time when I go to the movie.
And by the way, I've noticed this with horror movies; they're the most likely for people to say, I'll Redbox it.
Right. Well, that's also because a lot of horror movies recently have not been good.
Fair enough.
But for the ones that are critically acclaimed and are good, you still get assholes. I got assholes when I saw Stephen King's The Mist.
I got Insidious 3 coming up. All right,
Right. You're going to have assholes.
I know, and that's we may have to do a whole episode on the fuckheads of Insidious 3.
Perhaps that'll be what we discuss next week.
Well, on that note, I'm Dave Masakura. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Burnt Popcorn.
And I'm Tony Thomas. Check us out on YouTube and Twitter.
Have a good day.
Thank you.